Hey guys, Vic and Emma here, and this is our vitamins and mineral project, and we are doing it on sodium. So, sodium is a macromineral and must be consumed in large amounts through the diet compared to microminerals. It's important for several vital body processes, and proper blood sodium levels are vital. Forms of sodium. Most commonly combined with chloride to form table salt. In the US, only 6% of sodium consumption comes from a table salt shaker, 77% comes from processed foods, 12% through salt naturally found in foods.
Sodium is used in several different processes, and one of the big processes it's used in is fluid regulation. It monitors blood volume and sodium levels, and the kidneys will increase excretion of sodium if blood volume or sodium levels are too high, and they'll also release aldosterone if blood volume is too high, which helps excrete potassium and retain sodium and decrease urine production, which raises blood pressure. It also functions in nerve and muscle function. It helps prevent muscle cramping and skeletal muscle injury. It also aids in transportation to help transport molecules across cell membranes, and it's also involved in electrical potential across cell membranes.
So, excellent sources of sodium. Obviously, they're in many fruits and vegetables, fruits like guava, passion fruit, apples, etc. It's best to get sodium through foods in which it is naturally found rather than added sodium. Legumes also contain sodium, like navy beans. Some sodium intake recommendations according to the adequate intake levels for healthy people. Young adults should consume about 1.5 grams per day, 50 to 70-year-olds 1.3 grams per day, and 71 and older should consume 1.2 grams per day. Recommendations are controversial.
All the different research articles now give different guidelines for recommendations for sodium intakes, and the Dietary Guidelines for Americans recommend that all healthy individuals that are older than 14 should consume less than 2,300 milligrams per day, but those with high blood pressure should consume only 1,500 milligrams per day. But the Institute of Medicine doesn't agree with that, and they claim that there are no benefits from any amount of sodium less than 2,300 milligrams per day. And they say that if a person consumes below 2,300 milligrams per day, that it actually might harm them if they have kidney disease, diabetes, or cardiovascular disease. In the United States, many individuals consume way more sodium than is actually recommended. In the United States, men that are 19 years and older consume an average of 4,400 milligrams per day, and women in the United States, on average, that are 19 and older, consume an average of 3,090 milligrams per day.
So, chronic sodium deficiency, hyponatremia, it's low levels of sodium in the blood. It's caused by excessive vomiting or exercising in extreme heat. Rare for a healthy person to have low blood sodium. And the body is actually able to adapt to low sodium intake through sodium conservation. You can avoid this by consuming sports drinks or food during times of excessive sweating. So the signs and symptoms of chronic sodium deficiency are core body temperature of less than 104 degrees Fahrenheit, nausea and vomiting, swelling in hands and feet, headaches, confusion, lethargy, pulmonary or cerebral edema, seizures, coma, or injury of the skeletal muscles.
You can actually get problems from having too much sodium in your blood too, and elevated blood sodium is called hypernatremia, and it's usually caused by a high intake of table salt over a long period of time. And healthy people can typically excrete their excess sodium and don't have to worry about it building up in their blood. You can avoid too much sodium in your body by staying hydrated and drinking a lot of water. And also, studies have shown that drinking beet juice can help to combat excess salt by increasing nitric oxide, which helps the blood flow to the muscles. High blood pressure and It's also a sign of too high of sodium in the blood. Too high sodium can also increase your risk for stroke or for kidney and heart diseases. It decreases your nitric oxide levels in your body, which causes decreased blood flow. And the decreased blood flow then causes damage to the blood vessels, and it can cause you to have blood clots and a compromised immune system.
So there are two major functions during exercise of sodium. Number one would be fluid retention, and number two is restoration of electrolytes to promote proper muscle function. So exercise produces sweat, and sodium is the top electrolyte lost through sweat. That's why you have to replenish via sports drinks. Sodium recommendations for athletes should be specialized according to individual sweat loss. No set of guidelines can accurately recommend daily intake levels of sodium that would be appropriate for all athletes as a whole. So the more an athlete would sweat, over a period of their workout, the more sodium they will need to consume to make up for the sodium loss. Hydration is key for athletes for that reason, along with many others. Athletes should avoid drinking only water, though, because that can flush out sodium. Water and sports drinks should be consumed together.
Some interesting facts we found about sodium are the top sources of sodium consumption in the U.S. diet, and these are in order. The most consumed food that has the highest salt is breads and rolls, and then deli meats, pizza, chicken, soups, sandwiches, cheese, pasta dishes, and all savory snacks, usually the ones that are prepackaged and processed. And then another interesting fact is not all foods that are high in sodium even taste salty, so you could be eating a ton of salt and not even know it. Things like cereal and breads and pastries have high sodium contents, but they taste sweet. Okay, there's been a recent increase in the research that's been conducted on sodium intake, and that's because of the increase in cases of diet-related diseases. Some research claims that sodium is one of the top 2 dietary risk factors that contributes to the global burden of disease. And the World Health Organization has responded and called for all countries to try and reduce their average national sodium consumption by 30%. And they want to achieve this goal by regulating sodium in prepackaged foods and by educating people to make healthier choices and including more whole, fresh foods in their diet.
So some countries have already adopted these plans in order to reduce their national average sodium intake. The UK and New Zealand have seen great success after adopting these plans. They achieved their goal by encouraging manufacturers to limit the sodium they put into the food they make and set programs in place to educate the people on sodium in the diet. All right, so guys, let's see if y'all can figure this one out. True or false, it is common to have very low sodium levels in the blood, so it is not something to be too worried about. So this is actually false. Having very low sodium levels is called hyponatremia, as we talked about earlier, and the effects of this can be very detrimental to your body. And that's it on sodium.